If you think you're confused about how much you can take out of your investment account and not have to worry about running out of money in retirement, don't feel bad, because even the professionals are a little confused. Let's go for a walk and I'll share with you why this situation exists, right? So if you listen to some of the popular pundits, people like Dave Ramsey would say that you can take 8% out of your money, assuming that it's 100% in the stock market every year, and not have to worry about running out of money, right? That's a big distribution rate. I hope he's right. That would be wonderful if he's right. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Guyton that built off of the 4% rule. He made some tweaks and basically said, if in years when the stock market is down, you don't increase your distributions for inflation, and you think about it, most of us do that, right? When times are scary, we end up spending less. So Guyton looked at the 4% rule and said, you know what? You can actually spend 6%. Jonathan Guyton is that gentleman's name. Then, of course, there's the famous 4% rule developed by William Bengen that basically looked at U.S. stock market returns, importantly, in a portfolio that was about 70% invested in the stock market and 30% in bonds, and said, it's highly likely, like 95% likely, 97% likely, that somebody doing that over a 30-year time horizon would not run out of money. But, the challenge is people are living longer. Part of the theme of my channel is encouraging people to think about retiring sooner rather than later so they can take care of the youth of their senior years, right? So Bengen's work looked at 30 years, but what happens if you look at 40 years? And, just because the U.S. stock market has done well historically, it doesn't mean it's going to continue to do well. And if you do that same study on global stocks, if you do Bengen's 4% rule on global stocks instead of U.S. stocks, it turns out that number is closer to 3%. So what do you do? What's the right number for you? And so in today's video, I'm going to talk about how much money you need to have in order to take out of your investments $25,000 a year, $50,000 a year, and $75,000 a year. And just like with the 4% rule, what I'm looking at is what I call a sustainable withdrawal rate, SWR. And what that means is you take that amount out the first year, and then you want to continue to have that same purchasing power. So you continue to increase that year after year at the rate of inflation, right? So if we look at Bengen's rule, the 4% rule, which for a lot of us is a really good approximation, right? I mean, what we all want is certainty. But the reality is there's a lot of uncertainty in life, right? We don't know how long we're going to live. We don't know what kind of health we're going to be in. We don't even know what the tax rates are going to be at the end of this calendar year, right? This would not be the first year, as I record this, this would not be the first year that the tax rates change before the end of the year, and they apply for the entire calendar year, right? So the reality is, in financial planning and looking at your retirement, there's a lot of uncertainty. So what you can shoot for is clarity. And let me tell you what I'm comfortable with. And it doesn't mean that I'm right, but I do think it balances the desire for certainty with the reality of clarity and what it means to be human. Right? And this is not financial advice for any specific viewer, right? I don't know your situation, but these are some things for you to think about and for you to do your own research and hopefully work with a professional directly. Find a fee-only financial advisor near you just by Googling that term, and somebody that you can work with, that you trust, that has that knows your specific situation and can give you advice specific to you. I think that's really important. But again, Dave Ramsey would say 8%, right? So if you need $25,000 a year out of that, you would essentially need 12 times that amount. So it would be, a little over $300,000. But if you use the rule of 4%, the 4% rule, I like to use the inverse of 4%. The inverse of 4% is 25. 25 times 25,000 would be $625,000. So it's, you know, as the math would show, between 4% and 8%, it's about double the amount of money that you would need. And then if you look at other people that would say, you know, if you look at the U.S. stock market history in the Bengen study, the U.S. market did very, very well. The global market would not have supported a return like that. Major banks like JP Morgan recently came out with a study in 2022 where they said, you know, it's likely that the 4% rule is optimistic. And there's a decent chance people are going to run out of money if they use the 4% rule, specifically if you use it for more than 30 years and if you look at the current valuation in the stock market, right? So what do you do? And I think what you do is you realize that we as humans are adaptable. Trying to come up with a plan for 40 years for anything is the first time I've heard bells ringing here. Trying to come up with a plan for 40 years for anything is an exercise in futility, right? All you can do is the best that you can do. When you decide, if you decide to have kids, there's a leap of faith that takes place there, right? I mean, you can hope that if you raise your kids right and you treat them well, that, you know, they'll be productive, happy members of society. But there are no guarantees. And so as your child develops and you see, okay, this is my child's strength, this is my child's weaknesses, and we adjust. You know, the reality is we have to do the same thing with our finances. And I get it. It's scary because once you leave work, you know, for most of us, it's hard to get another job like what we have right now. And so we're hesitant to make that leap. So you want to have a buffer. And I think some buffer makes sense, but you don't want to have too big of a buffer, right? Because you have to balance the certainty that more money in the bank gives us with the reality that our internal clock is ticking as well. We only have so much time, right? Regular viewers of my channel know, I say this often, if you're 60 years old, unfortunately, you only have 1,000 weeks remaining of healthy, active time. Okay, so let's jump into what I promised this video was going to be about. How much money do you need if you want to take $25,000 a year out of your investments? I walk through how to do that. That's $625,000. If you want to take $50,000 out, and these aren't guaranteed numbers. These are just using the rule of 4% or the inverse of that, taking how much you want to spend and multiplying it by 25. And then you're going to have to adjust based on what happens. You know, if you get lucky and the stock market does really well, you know, so your biggest risk is in the first couple years of retirement because that's when your investment account is the largest. And taking a 30% hit, which could easily happen with a 70-30 portfolio, doesn't happen often, but it could easily happen. You know, you're going to feel that. And on the largest sum when you first retire, that's going to have the biggest impact. So we adjust, we're human, we make modifications as we go, but I think the best we have to go on right now is the 4% rule. So for $25,000, the 4% rule would say you need $625,000. If you want to take $50,000 a year out of your account, you would need twice that, which is $1.25 million. For $75,000, you would need a little under $1.9 million, $1.875 million. And to take $100,000 out, right, this really illustrates the rule of 25, which is the inverse of the 4%. 100,000 times 25 is 2.5 million. And that's what the rule of 4% would tell you that you need. And I know you're going to enjoy this video up here that talks about average income for retirees, and this video down here that talks about 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. I'll see you inside of one of those videos. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.